The rain fell in steady sheets as I stood at the edge of the cemetery, watching them lower Catherine's casket into the dark, wet earth. I couldn't bring myself to move closer to the mourners huddled under black umbrellas around the grave. Not because of the rain. I was already soaked to the bone, my suit clinging uncomfortably to my aging frame, but because of the words my daughter had hissed at me when I'd arrived at the funeral home earlier that day. "You shouldn't be here," Eliza had whispered through her tears, her voice trembling with a mixture of grief and hatred that cut deeper than any knife. "Mom wouldn't want you here." 55 years of life had prepared me for many things, but nothing had prepared me for that moment. The daughter I had raised, loved and sacrificed everything for, had looked at me as if I were a stranger. No, worse than a stranger, an enemy. I'd backed away, stunned, unable to form a response. The funeral director, sensing the tension, had gently suggested I might want to sit in the back, like an unwanted guest at my own wife's funeral, the woman I had been married to for 30 years. Now, as the ceremony concluded and the mourners began to disperse, I remained rooted to my spot beneath a large oak tree, watching from a distance. My son, Thomas, stood with his arm around Eliza, comforting her as she sobbed into his shoulder. My grandchildren, Catherine's grandchildren, stood solemn and confused, too young to fully comprehend the finality of death but old enough to feel its weight. Not one of them looked in my direction. Not one of them acknowledged my presence. I was a ghost at my own wife's funeral. The minister said his final words, and people began to drift away toward their cars. I watched as Eliza and Thomas led my 3 grandchildren across the cemetery, heads bowed against the rain. I should have been with them. I should have been part of that somber procession. Instead, I stood alone, an outcast. Only after everyone had left did I approach the grave. The freshly turned earth was dark against the bright green of the cemetery lawn. The flower arrangements that had been carefully placed around the casket were now scattered by the wind and rain, petals torn and colors bleeding together. I knelt in the mud beside the grave, heedless of the damage to my only good suit. "I'm sorry, Kathy," I whispered, my voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." For what exactly, I wasn't entirely sure. For not being the husband she deserved? For whatever I had done that had made my children believe I didn't deserve to stand at her graveside? For the fact that she was gone and I was still here? All of it, probably. I don't know how long I knelt there in the rain before I felt a hand on my shoulder. I looked up to see an older man with a weathered face and kind eyes standing over me, holding an umbrella. "Come on, Frank," said Robert, my oldest friend and former colleague. "You can't stay out here, you'll catch your death." I almost laughed at the irony. Death would have been a mercy at that moment. "They didn't want me there, Rob," I said, my voice hollow. "My own children didn't want me at my wife's funeral." Robert's grip on my shoulder tightened. "I know, and I don't understand it either. But you're not going to figure it out kneeling in the mud. Come on, I'll drive you home." Home. The word felt empty now. The house in Saratoga Springs where Catherine and I had lived for the past 15 years wasn't home without her. It was just a house filled with memories and silence. But I let Robert help me to my feet and guide me to his car. As we drove away from the cemetery, I watched the rain-blurred landscape pass by and wondered how my life had come to this. How had I become a stranger to my own family? The answer, I feared, lay in the past, a past I had spent decades trying to forget. Robert pulled into my driveway and insisted on coming inside. He made coffee while I changed out of my wet clothes, and when I came downstairs, he had 2 mugs waiting on the kitchen table. "You want to talk about it?" he asked, as I sat down across from him. I stared into the black coffee. "I don't know what there is to say. My wife is dead and my children hate me." "They don't hate you, Frank. You weren't there. You didn't see the way Eliza looked at me." I took a sip of coffee, the bitter liquid burning my throat. "She told me Catherine wouldn't want me there. At her own funeral. What am I supposed to make of that?" Robert sighed heavily. "Look, I've known you and Catherine for what, 25 years? I never saw anything but love between you two. Whatever's going on with your kids, it's not because Catherine didn't love you. Then why would Eliza say that? People say all kinds of things when they're grieving, things they don't mean. But I knew my daughter. I had seen the conviction in her eyes. She believed what she was saying. "Have you tried talking to them?" Robert asked. "Thomas, at least. He's always been more level-headed." I shook my head. "I've called both of them every day since Catherine." I couldn't finish the sentence. "They don't answer. They don't return my messages." Robert frowned. "That's not right. No matter what's going on, you're their father, and you just lost your wife. I had. I had lost Catherine, my anchor, my compass, the woman who had saved me when I was drowning in my own mistakes, the woman who had given me a second chance at life and love when I least deserved it. After Robert left, promising to check on me the next day, I wandered through the house feeling Catherine's absence in every room. Her reading glasses still sat on the nightstand. Her gardening gloves were still draped over the mudroom hook. Her favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle that she refused to throw away, still sat in the dish drainer. I found myself in her office, a small converted sunroom where she had spent countless hours working on her watercolors and managing the household accounts. Everything was meticulously organized, as Catherine had always been. Bills in one folder, insurance documents in another, bank statements neatly filed by date. I sat in her chair surrounded by the remnants of her orderly life, and wept for the first time since she had died. Not the quiet tears I had shed at her bedside in the hospital, but racking, violent sobs that left me gasping for breath. How had I never appreciated the miracle of her? How had I taken for granted the incredible gift of her forgiveness and love? She had known everything about me, all my flaws, all my failures, and had loved me anyway. But apparently she hadn't told our children the truth. Or if she had, they had drawn their own conclusions. Either way, the result was the same. They believed I didn't deserve to mourn her. When the tears finally subsided, I found myself staring at Catherine's computer. It was still on, the screensaver a slideshow of family photos. I watched as images of our life together flashed across the screen. Catherine and me on our wedding day. The four of us, Catherine, me, Thomas, and Eliza, at the Grand Canyon. Catherine holding our first grandchild. I moved the mouse and the screen came to life, showing her email inbox. I knew I shouldn't look. Catherine had always been respectful of my privacy, and I had tried to return the favor. But something compelled me to click on the most recent message, sent just days before she had collapsed in our kitchen. The first sign of the aneurysm that would take her life a week later. The email was from Eliza, and the subject line made my blood run cold. Found the letters. I clicked to open it, my heart pounding. Mom, I can't believe what I found while helping you clean out the attic. Those letters from Dad when he was in prison. Why didn't you ever tell us the truth? All these years we thought he was away on a work assignment when we were little. A work assignment. For 3 years. How could you protect him like this? How could you stay with a man who did what he did? I'm coming over tomorrow. We need to talk about this. I don't want Thomas to know yet. Not until we figure out what to do. I stared at the screen, a cold dread spreading through me. The letters. The ones I had written to Catherine from Allenwood Federal Correctional Institution, begging for her forgiveness, promising to be a better man if she would just give me another chance. Letters filled with shame and regret and desperate love. Letters I thought she had destroyed decades ago. I clicked back to Catherine's inbox, searching for her response to Eliza, but there wasn't one. Or if there had been, she had deleted it. The next email from Eliza had been sent 3 days later, just hours before Catherine's collapse. I still can't believe you're defending him. After what he did to those people, to our family. He stole from them, Mom. He lied. He went to prison. And you never told us. You let us believe he was this perfect father who was away working hard for his family, when really he was in a cell paying for his crimes. How could you? My hands were shaking as I closed the email. So that was it. Eliza had discovered my past, the past Catherine and I had agreed to keep from our children until they were old enough to understand. But they had grown up, started their own families, and somehow the right time to tell them had never come. And now Catherine was gone, and I was left to face their judgment alone. I leaned back in Catherine's chair, memories washing over me like the rain that had soaked through my suit at the cemetery. It had been 1992, and I was working as a financial advisor at a small firm in Albany. I wasn't particularly successful, just another guy in a cheap suit trying to make a living in a competitive field. We had 2 small children, a mortgage we could barely afford, and Catherine was working part-time as a teacher to help make ends meet. I was desperate to provide better for my family, to give Catherine the life she deserved, to make sure Thomas and Eliza had opportunities I never had. And when a client approached me with what seemed like a golden opportunity, a chance to get in on the ground floor of a real estate development with guaranteed returns, I jumped at it. I should have done my due diligence. I should have asked more questions. But the initial returns were so good, and the client, A smooth-talking businessman named Victor Mercer was so convincing. Soon I was bringing in other clients, friends, family members, encouraging them to invest. By the time I realized it was all a Ponzi scheme, it was too late. The money was gone. Victor Mercer had disappeared to some non-extradition country, and I was left facing charges of wire fraud and securities violations. I hadn't created the scheme. I hadn't intended to defraud anyone, but I had been criminally negligent. I had failed in my duty to protect my clients' interests, and people had lost their life savings because they trusted me. The trial was quick. I pleaded guilty, hoping for leniency. The judge gave me 3 years at a minimum security federal prison. It could have been worse. It probably should have been worse. Catherine had every reason to leave me, to take the kids and start over with someone who hadn't destroyed their family's reputation and financial security. Most of the wives in similar situations did exactly that. But not Catherine. She visited me every month, bringing the children, telling them Daddy was away working on a special project. She wrote to me every week, letters full of everyday details about the children's lives, about her struggles to keep our house, about her unwavering belief that I was a good man who had made a terrible mistake. And when I was released after serving my full sentence, she was there waiting for me. She had moved us to a small town in western Massachusetts where no one knew our story. She had found a job teaching full-time. She had kept our family together. "Everyone deserves a second chance, Frank," she had told me on the drive to our new home. "Everyone deserves the opportunity to make things right." And I had tried. God, how I had tried. I found a job as a carpenter's assistant, learning the trade from the ground up. I went back to school at night and got an accounting degree. I worked my way up to a position as a financial controller for a construction company, a job where I handled money, but wasn't responsible for investment advice. I volunteered in the community. I was home for dinner every night. I never missed a school play or a baseball game. For 30 years I had lived an honest, hard-working life, trying to be worthy of Catherine's faith in me, trying to be the father my children deserved, and I had thought I'd succeeded. But now, sitting in Catherine's office, reading emails that laid bare my children's discovery of my past, I realized that the foundation of our family life had been built on a lie. A lie of omission, perhaps, but a lie nonetheless. And now that Catherine was gone, that foundation was crumbling. I spent the night searching through Catherine's emails and files looking for answers. I found more exchanges with Eliza, growing increasingly heated. Catherine defending me. Eliza accusing her of enabling a criminal. Catherine begging her to understand the complexity of the situation. Eliza demanding to know why they had never been told the truth. The last email Catherine had sent, the day before her collapse, broke my heart. "Eliza, I understand you're angry and hurt. You have every right to be. But before you judge your father, please try to understand the impossible situation we were in. We initially kept the truth from you and Thomas because you were too young to understand. Later we worried that telling you would only cause pain and confusion for no good reason. The man who made those terrible mistakes 30 years ago is not the father you know and love. Frank has spent every day since his release trying to make amends, not just to the people he harmed, but to you, to Thomas, to me, and to himself. He is a good man who did a bad thing, just as we are all more than our worst mistakes. I'm asking you to give him the chance to explain, to tell his side of the story. If after that you still cannot forgive him, I will understand. But please don't make any decisions until you've heard him out." Catherine had been trying to protect me until the very end, and now she was gone, and I had to face the consequences of our decision alone. The next morning I called Thomas and Eliza again. As expected, neither answered. I left messages asking them to please call me back, that we needed to talk. Then I showered, dressed, and did the only thing I could think of. I drove to Thomas's house in Schenectady, about 40 minutes away. His wife, Jennifer, answered the door, her expression immediately shifting from surprise to discomfort when she saw me. "Frank, we weren't expecting you. I need to speak with Thomas, Jen, please." She hesitated, then stepped back to let me in. "He's in his office. I'll tell him you're here." I waited in the living room, surrounded by photos of my son's family. Thomas and Jennifer on their wedding day. Their 3 children at various ages. Family vacations, school photos. Normal, happy moments that I had been a part of. Or so I had thought. Thomas appeared in the doorway, his face unreadable. At 32, he looked so much like me at that age that it was sometimes startling. The same dark hair, though mine was now more salt than pepper. The same strong jawline, the same deep-set eyes. But his expression was pure Catherine. Measured, thoughtful, giving nothing away. "Dad," he said flatly, "this isn't a good time." "Is there a good time for this conversation, Thomas? Because I've been calling both you and your sister for days, and neither of you will talk to me." He sighed and entered the room, closing the door behind him. "What do you want me to say? That I'm not angry? That I understand why you and Mom lied to us our entire lives?" So Eliza had told him after all. "I want you to give me a chance to explain." "Explain what? That you committed fraud? That you went to prison? That people lost their life savings because they trusted you?" His voice was rising. "Or maybe you want to explain why you and Mom decided we didn't deserve to know the truth about our own father." I flinched at each accusation, each one striking like a physical blow. "Yes, to all of it. I want to explain everything. I owe you that much." Thomas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like Catherine's that it made my chest ache. "Do you have any idea what it's like to find out your entire childhood was based on a lie? That while other kids' dads were away on business trips, mine was in a federal prison? I know it's a shock." "A shock? It's a betrayal, Dad. From both of you." His voice broke on the last word, and I could see the hurt child beneath the angry man. "Mom defended you until the end. Even when Eliza found those letters and confronted her, Mom stood by you. Said you were a good man who made a mistake. Said we needed to hear your side. Your mother was an extraordinary woman." "Don't." Thomas held up a hand. "Don't use her memory to manipulate me right now." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "I'm not trying to manipulate you, Thomas. I'm trying to honor what your mother wanted. For you and Eliza to hear the truth from me. The whole truth." He stared at me for a long moment, conflict evident in his eyes. Finally, he nodded slightly. "Fine. Say what you came to say." And so I did. I told him everything. About my desperate desire to provide for my family. About Victor Mercer and his elaborate Ponzi scheme. About my own negligence and willful blindness. About the trial, the sentencing, the years in prison. I told him about Catherine's unwavering support, about her decision to protect him and Eliza from the harsh reality of our situation, about our move to Massachusetts and my slow, painstaking effort to rebuild a life of integrity. "We always planned to tell you both when you were older," I explained, "but as time passed, it seemed less and less relevant. You were thriving. Our family was happy. We worried that revealing the truth would only cause pain for no purpose. So instead, you lied, for 30 years. We didn't lie about who I am, Thomas. Just about one terrible chapter in my life. Everything else, my love for you and Eliza, for your mother, my values, the life lessons I tried to teach you, all of that was real." Thomas was silent for a long time, processing everything I had said. Finally, he spoke. "I need time to think about all this, and you need to talk to Eliza. She's the one who found the letters. She's taking it even harder than I am. She won't answer my calls. Can you blame her? She idolized you, Dad. You were her hero. And now she thinks I'm a fraud. Just like you do." Thomas didn't deny it. "She's staying at Mom's house, your house, packing up some of Mom's things. She said she couldn't stand the thought of those belongings being in the same house as you." The words stung, but I nodded. "Thank you for telling me, and for listening." As I turned to leave, Thomas called after me. "Dad, for what it's worth, I do believe you're sorry. I just don't know if that's enough." I drove straight from Thomas's house to my own, hoping to find Eliza there. Sure enough, her car was in the driveway. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, gathering my courage before finally going inside. I found her in Catherine's closet, carefully folding sweaters and placing them in cardboard boxes. She froze when she saw me standing in the doorway. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice hard. "I live here, Eliza. This is my home. This was Mom's home. You just happened to live in it too." I stepped into the room, and she took a step back as if I were dangerous, as if I might hurt her. The gesture cut me to the quick. "Eliza, please. Can we talk? I have nothing to say to you." "Then just listen, please. Your mother wanted you to hear my side of the story." At the mention of Catherine, Eliza's face crumpled momentarily before she regained control. "Don't you dare use Mom to manipulate me." It was exactly what Thomas had said. Had they discussed this? Coordinated their responses? The thought that my children had united against me was almost more than I could bear. "I'm not trying to manipulate you, Eliza. I'm trying to honor your mother's last wish. Her last wish? Her last wish was probably that she'd never married a criminal in the first place. The words hung in the air between us, cruel and cutting. I saw Eliza register the impact of what she'd said, saw a flicker of regret cross her face, but she didn't take it back. Is that really what you think? I asked quietly. That your mother regretted our marriage? Our family? You and Thomas? I don't know what to think anymore. I don't know what was real and what was a lie. Tears welled in her eyes. You know what the worst part is? I always bragged about you to my friends, about what an amazing father you were, how you taught me the importance of honesty and integrity, how you always said that a person's character is defined by what they do when no one is watching. She laughed bitterly. What a joke. It wasn't a joke, Eliza. Everything I taught you about integrity, I learned the hard way, by losing mine and seeing the consequences. You went to prison, while we thought you were working on some special project. Do you have any idea how twisted that is? We were trying to protect you. You were 4 years old when I was sentenced. Thomas was 7. What were we supposed to tell you, that Daddy was going away because he had broken the law, that Daddy had hurt people? You should have told us the truth when we were old enough to understand. Instead, you kept lying. Year after year after year. She was right. Of course she was right. Catherine and I had taken the easy way out, convincing ourselves that revealing the truth would only cause unnecessary pain. But in doing so, we had set the stage for an even greater pain when the truth inevitably came to light. You're right, I said simply. We should have told you when you were older. It was wrong to keep it from you for so long. And I'm sorry, Eliza. Truly sorry. My admission seemed to take some of the wind out of her sails. She sat down heavily on the edge of the bed, surrounded by her mother's clothes. I found the letters by accident, she said after a moment. I was helping Mom clean out the attic, and there was this old box marked Frank, 1992-1995. I thought it might have old photos or something. She shook her head. Instead, it was full of letters. From you, in prison. Talking about how sorry you were. How you'd betrayed everyone's trust. How you didn't deserve Mom's forgiveness but were begging for it anyway. I remembered those letters. I had poured my heart out on those pages, writing late at night in my cell, trying to make sense of my actions and their consequences, trying to hold on to the only thing that mattered, my family. Why did you tell me you were away working? Eliza asked, her voice small now like a child's. Why did you and Mom lie? I sat down beside her, careful to maintain some distance. We thought we were protecting you. You were so little, Eliza. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that her father is in prison? That he's done something terrible? We thought it would be easier for you to believe I was away working. And later, when I was 10, 15, 20, there was never a right time to say, oh, by the way, remember when Dad was away for 3 years? He was actually in federal prison for fraud? We should have told you, I admitted again. It was a mistake to keep it from you for so long. We had built this new life. You and Thomas were happy. The past seemed so far behind us. We worried that telling you would only cause pain and confusion. Instead, you let me find out after Mom died, when she couldn't even explain her side of things. Fresh tears spilled down Eliza's cheeks. And now I'll never know why she stayed with you, why she forgave you for what you did. She told you why in her last email to you, I said gently. She believed I was a good man who had made a terrible mistake. She believed everyone deserves a second chance. Eliza's head snapped up. You read our emails? You invaded her privacy even after she died? I realized my mistake too late. I was trying to understand why you and Thomas were shutting me out. I needed to know what you knew. Get out, Eliza said, her voice trembling with anger. Get out of this room. Get out of this house. I can't even look at you right now. Eliza, please, get out, she shouted, standing up. This is Mom's house and you don't deserve to be here. You didn't deserve her and you don't deserve to call yourself our father. Her words hit me like physical blows, each one landing with devastating accuracy. Because deep down I feared she was right. I hadn't deserved Catherine's forgiveness. I hadn't deserved the second chance she had given me. And maybe I didn't deserve to be Thomas and Eliza's father, not after keeping such a significant truth from them for their entire lives. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 55 years plus about 20 more. I'll go. But Eliza, please know that everything I ever told you about right and wrong, about integrity and character, I meant every word. I learned those lessons the hardest way possible. And everything I ever told you about how much I love you and your brother, that was the purest truth of my life. She didn't respond, just turned away from me, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I left her there, surrounded by the remnants of her mother's life, and walked out of the house that no longer felt like my home. I checked into a motel on the outskirts of town, not sure where else to go. The small room with its worn carpet and faded bedspread felt appropriate somehow, a physical manifestation of how far I had fallen in just a few short days. From a man with a loving wife, 2 successful children, and 3 beautiful grandchildren to a pariah, unwelcome in his own home, shunned by his own family. I sat on the edge of the bed and pulled out my phone, scrolling through photos. Catherine and me on our 30th anniversary trip to Maine last year. Thomas and his family at Christmas. Eliza and her husband David with their daughter Sophie at her 5th birthday party just months ago. Had it all been an illusion? Had my redemption been nothing but a convenient fiction, allowed to exist only because the truth remained buried? I thought about what Catherine would say if she were here. She had always been my moral compass, especially in the darkest days after my release from prison. When I had doubted whether I could ever be a good man again, she had been the one to remind me that our character is defined not by our worst mistakes, but by how we respond to them. The measure of a person, Frank, she had told me once, is not that they never fall, but how they rise after falling. I had tried to rise. For 30 years I had lived a life of painstaking honesty and integrity. I had worked hard, loved my family, contributed to my community. I had never again taken the easy path when the right path was harder. But I had allowed one crucial lie to persist, and now that lie threatened to erase everything good I had built in the decades since my release. I spent a restless night in the motel, plagued by memories and regrets. By morning, I had come to a decision. If there was any hope of salvaging my relationship with my children, it would require complete honesty, not just about my past, but about the victims of my negligence. I drove to the local library when it opened and used one of their computers to search for news articles about the investment fraud case from 1992. Most of the coverage had faded from online archives, but I found enough to piece together a list of the major victims. Many of them had been friends, colleagues, even family members, people who had trusted me with their futures, people whose lives had been devastated by my failure to perform due diligence on Victor Mercer's scheme. I made a list of everyone I could remember, adding names from the old news articles. Then I began searching for them, trying to discover where they were now, 30 years later. Some were easy to find. James and Martha Collier, a couple in their 40s when they invested their entire retirement savings, now lived in a small apartment in Syracuse. William Chen, who had lost the money he'd been saving for his children's college education, was still in Albany, working as a high school math teacher well past retirement age. Sarah Donovan, a widow who had invested the life insurance payout after her husband's death, had died 10 years ago, never having recovered financially from her losses. Others were harder to track down. Some had moved away, changed names, disappeared into the vastness of American life. But I compiled as complete a list as I could, with current addresses where possible. Then I drove back to my house, hoping Eliza had gone. The house was empty when I arrived, though evidence of her presence remained. Boxes of Catherine's clothes stacked in the hallway, ready to be donated or distributed to family members. I went to my office and sat down at the desk. For the next several hours I wrote letters to Thomas and Eliza, explaining everything in detail, the full story of my crime, my punishment, my redemption, and the decision Catherine and I had made to shield them from the truth. I didn't make excuses. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I simply told the truth, completely and without reservation. Then I wrote letters to each of the victims I had been able to locate. I explained who I was, acknowledged the harm I had caused them, and expressed my profound regret. I didn't expect forgiveness from them either, but I needed them to know that I had never forgotten the pain I had caused. With each letter I enclosed a check. Over the years, Catherine and I had lived frugally, saving as much as we could. We had a modest retirement account, some investments, and the house was almost paid off. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to make a significant difference to people who had lost everything because of me. I knew it wouldn't fully compensate them for what they had lost. Not just the money, but the dreams attached to it, the security, the trust. But it was what I could do now, today. The last letter I wrote was to Catherine. I knew she would never read it, but I needed to put the words on paper anyway. I thanked her for her faith in me, for her courage in standing by me when she had every reason to walk away. I promised to do whatever it took to repair my relationship with our children, and I told her, one last time, how much I had loved her. After sealing all the envelopes and adding stamps, I drove to the post office and mailed them. Then I returned to the motel, exhausted but feeling lighter than I had since Catherine's death. I had done what I could. The rest was out of my hands. 3 days passed with no word from Thomas or Eliza. I remained at the motel, venturing out only for meals and necessities. On the 4th day, as I was returning from a solitary dinner at a nearby diner, I found Thomas waiting for me in the motel parking lot, leaning against his car. "How did you find me?" I asked as I approached. "Small town, not many motels." He studied me, his expression unreadable. "You look terrible, Dad." I managed a weak smile. "Thanks. You look like your mother." We stood in awkward silence for a moment before Thomas spoke again. "I got your letter, and I've been trying to process it." He ran a hand through his hair, that gesture so like Catherine's. "I spoke with James Collier yesterday." I felt my heart skip a beat. "You what?" "I called him. The number was in the phone book. I wanted to hear his side of the story." "I understand," I said, though my stomach churned with anxiety. What had James told him? The man had every right to hate me, to paint me in the worst possible light. "He said something interesting," Thomas continued. "He said you've been sending him a check every Christmas for the past 30 years. Not large amounts, but consistent. He said you never included a note, never asked for forgiveness, just sent the money with a blank card." I looked down, embarrassed. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough, but it was what I could do. "Why didn't you tell us about that?" "It wasn't in your letter." I shrugged. It didn't seem important. It was the least I could do. Literally. Thomas was quiet for a moment. "James Collier doesn't hate you, Dad. He said he did for a long time, but not anymore. He said what happened forced him and Martha to start over, to rebuild from nothing. It was the hardest thing they ever went through, but they did it together. He said in a strange way, he's grateful for the perspective it gave him." I felt tears prick at my eyes. He's a better man than I am. Maybe. Or maybe he just had 30 years to process what happened, while Eliza and I have had less than 2 weeks. Thomas sighed. "I also spoke with William Chen and Diane Mercer, Victor's wife." I was stunned. I hadn't even thought to contact Diane. She had been as much a victim as anyone, left to deal with the fallout when Victor fled the country. Thomas nodded. "She's remarried now, lives in Rochester. She told me how you testified against Victor, how you cooperated fully with the investigation even though it meant a longer sentence for you. She said you were the only one involved who ever apologized to her directly." I remembered that conversation, sitting across from Diane in the courthouse hallway during a recess in the trial, trying to find words adequate to express my regret for my role in her husband's crimes. "I didn't include any of that in my letter either," I said. "No, you didn't. Your letter was all about your failures, your mistakes, your regrets. Not a word about the steps you took to make amends. I hadn't thought those steps were significant enough to mention. They had been so small compared to the harm I had caused. The point is," Thomas continued, "I've been talking to people who knew you then, who were hurt by what you did, and none of them see you the way Eliza and I have been seeing you these past 2 weeks. None of them see a monster or a fraud. They see a flawed man who made a terrible mistake and spent the rest of his life trying to make up for it." I didn't know what to say to that. I had never expected forgiveness from my victims, had never felt I deserved it. "I'm still angry that you and Mom lied to us for so long," Thomas said. "I still think you should have told us the truth years ago, but I'm starting to understand why you didn't. And I'm starting to see that the father I've known all my life, the honest, hard-working man who taught me about integrity and responsibility, that wasn't a lie. That was the real you, the man you became after your mistake." The tears I had been holding back began to fall. "Thank you," I whispered. "That means more than you can know." Thomas stepped forward and after a moment's hesitation embraced me. It was awkward at first, but then I felt him relax into it, and I held my son as if he were still the little boy who had climbed into my lap for comfort after a nightmare. "Come home, Dad," he said as we pulled apart. "Stay with us for a while. Jennifer and the kids miss you." "What about Eliza?" Thomas's expression grew serious. "She's still struggling. She read your letter, but she hasn't said much about it. She needs more time. I understand. But she did say one thing. She said Mom would want us to work through this as a family. And she's right. I spent the next week at Thomas and Jennifer's house, slowly rebuilding my relationship with my son and his family. We talked for hours about my past, about Catherine, about the complex, imperfect, beautiful life we had built together. I answered every question honestly, holding nothing back. Jennifer, to my surprise and gratitude, was a staunch advocate for reconciliation. We all make mistakes, Frank, she told me one evening as we sat on their back porch. Some bigger than others, sure, but what matters is what you do afterward. And from everything I can see, you've spent 30 years trying to make things right. My grandchildren were more resilient than I had feared. Thomas and Jennifer had explained the situation to them in age-appropriate terms, emphasizing that people can make serious mistakes and still be good people if they learn from those mistakes and try to make amends. Like when I broke Mom's vase and tried to hide it, my 10-year-old grandson Ben had said thoughtfully. Except way, way worse. Something like that, Thomas had agreed, catching my eye over Ben's head. Eliza remained distant, though she had agreed to meet with me. We sat in a coffee shop in downtown Saratoga Springs, neutral territory for what promised to be a difficult conversation. I read your letter, she said after we had exchanged stilted pleasantries, and Thomas told me about his conversations with some of the people you hurt. I never expected them to forgive me, I said. I still don't. But they have. But, haven't they? At least some of them. I considered this. I think some of them have found peace with what happened. I don't know if that's the same as forgiveness. Eliza twisted her coffee cup in her hands. I kept thinking about what Mom said in her last email to me, about how you've spent every day since your release trying to make amends. I thought she was just defending you because she loved you, but now I'm not so sure. Your mother was the most clear-eyed person I've ever known, I said. She didn't have any illusions about me or what I had done, but she believed in redemption, in second chances. She never doubted you, never regretted staying with you. I thought about the difficult early years after my release, the struggle to find work with a felony conviction, the whispers when people discovered my past, the financial hardship as we slowly rebuilt our lives. There had been moments of tension, of fear, of exhaustion, but never doubt, never regret. Not that she ever told me, I said honestly. I asked her once about 5 years after my release if she ever wished she had made a different choice, if she ever regretted tying her life to mine after what I had done. I smiled at the memory. She looked at me like I had suggested the sky was green. Regret loving you? Regret our family? What a ridiculous question, Frank, she said. And that was that. Eliza's eyes filled with tears. That sounds like Mom. She was quiet for a moment, then asked, why did you never tell us? The real reason, not just to protect us when we were little, but later. I had asked myself the same question many times since Catherine's death. Fear, I think. Fear that you would look at me differently, that you would be ashamed of me, that I would lose your respect, your love. I met her gaze directly. The same things I'm afraid of now. I said terrible things to you. At the funeral, at the house, things I can't take back. You were shocked and grieving, and angry. You had every right to be. I told you that you shouldn't be at Mom's funeral. Eliza's voice broke. How could I have said that? After 30 years of marriage, after everything you and Mom built together, how could I have been so cruel? You didn't have all the facts. You found evidence of the worst chapter of my life without any context. But I should have listened to Mom. She begged me to hear your side before making judgments. And instead I shut you out when you needed us most, when we had just lost Mom and should have been supporting each other. I reached across the table and took her hand. We're here now. That's what matters. Eliza squeezed my hand, then withdrew hers to wipe away tears. I don't know if I can fully forgive you yet, Dad, for keeping the truth from us for so long, but I want to try. I want to understand, and I want us to be a family again. That's all I can ask for. As we left the coffee shop, Eliza surprised me with a quick, fierce hug. I'm sorry about what I said at the funeral, she whispered. You had every right to be there. Mom would have wanted you there more than anyone. The road to reconciliation was long and sometimes painful. There were difficult conversations, moments of resurfacing anger, times when the weight of the past threatened to overwhelm the present. But slowly, deliberately, we rebuilt our family bonds. 2 months after Catherine's funeral, we held a private memorial service in our backyard. The garden she had loved and tended for 15 years. Thomas and Jennifer were there with their children. Eliza and David came with Sophie. Robert and a few other close friends joined us. We shared memories of Catherine, her kindness, her quiet strength, her unwavering belief in the possibility of redemption. We laughed about her stubborn refusal to replace appliances until they completely stopped working, her terrible singing voice that never stopped her from belting out show tunes in the shower, her uncanny ability to know exactly what each of us needed before we knew it ourselves. As twilight fell, I found myself standing alone by the small pond Catherine had insisted on installing, despite my protests about the maintenance it would require. "Some things are worth the extra work, Frank," she had said, and as usual, she had been right. Eliza came to stand beside me, slipping her arm through mine. "Mom would have loved this," she said softly. "All of us together, remembering her in her garden." "She would have," I agreed. "Dad, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." "Anything, sweetheart. How did you do it? How did you rebuild your life after everything? How did you find the strength to start over, to be better?" I thought about it for a moment. "Your mother, of course. Her faith in me gave me something to live up to, but also shame. Shame. Yes, not the destructive kind that paralyzes you, but the kind that motivates you. I was deeply ashamed of what I had done, of the people I had hurt, and I never wanted to feel that way again. I never wanted to see that look of disappointment in your mother's eyes, or in yours and Thomas's, so I committed myself to living a life I didn't have to be ashamed of." Eliza nodded slowly. "I think I understand that. It's like what you always told me about integrity, doing the right thing even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching," I corrected gently. "Because someone always is, yourself." We stood in companionable silence for a while, watching the last light fade from the sky. Then Eliza said, "I found something else in Mom's office. A letter she wrote to Thomas and me, dated about a year ago. She had it in an envelope marked, 'To be opened in the event of my death.'" My heart skipped a beat. What did it say? A lot of things. About how much she loved us. About her hopes for our futures. About how proud she was of the adults we had become. Eliza paused. "And about you. About how meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to her, even with all the challenges. About how watching you rebuild your life after your mistake taught her what true strength and character look like." I felt tears forming, but made no move to wipe them away. "She never told me that. She wrote that she had been planning to tell us the truth about your past for years, but could never find the right moment. She was afraid of how we would react, afraid it would change how we saw you." Eliza smiled sadly. "I guess she was right to worry. We should have told you together. Long ago. It was wrong to keep it from you for so long." "Yes, it was. But I think I understand why you didn't." She turned to face me. "And I forgive you, Dad. For the lie, and for what came before it. I forgive you." The words I had never expected to hear from my daughter washed over me like a benediction. "Thank you," I whispered. "Mom wrote something else in her letter. Something I've been thinking about a lot." Eliza's voice was soft in the gathering darkness. She said that forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about creating the possibility of a different future. Catherine's wisdom, reaching out from beyond the grave to heal our fractured family. Of course, even in death she was bringing us together, showing us the path forward. As we walked back to join the others, I felt Catherine's presence all around us, in the garden she had created, in the family she had nurtured, in the legacy of forgiveness and redemption she had left behind. At my wife's funeral, my daughter had whispered through tears that I shouldn't be there, but in the months that followed, through painful truths and difficult reconciliations, we had found our way back to each other, not by burying the past, but by facing it honestly, not by pretending I had never fallen, but by acknowledging how far I had climbed since that fall. Catherine had given me a second chance 30 years ago, believing that a person could be more than their worst mistake. Now, through her final gift to our children, the truth, she had given our family a second chance as well. And as I looked at my children and grandchildren gathered in the garden Catherine had loved, I made a silent promise to her and to them. I would spend whatever years I had left living a life worthy of that second chance, a life of integrity, honesty, and love, a life Catherine would be proud of, because in the end, that was the truest measure of redemption. If you like this story, please like this video, Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left.